Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Behind Enemy Lines Hockey Podcast. Today, we're going to do a whole hodgepodge of discussions here, from players to scores and what's coming up, what to expect, why certain things are happening. As always, joined by my good friend and fellow Habs fan, Steve.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about. There's been a lot of news, a lot of action surrounding the club in the last since our last podcast, since the eve of the Maple Leaf game, and there's some things that we need to talk about. So we'll start. We'll jump into a trivia question. I know we didn't do one last episode. There's been a Gator sighting in Ottawa. Um, Jacob Fowler has returned to the team. So, quick and easy, when was the last time the Montreal Canadiens rotated a three goalie system where all goalies played more than 10 games? And
Actually,
bonus points if you know the three goalies.
I think I know the three goalies, and if I'm right, and I don't know, but if I'm right, I don't think we have to go very far back in history. Is that a good hint?
That's hint enough.
Okay. Okay. So let's just talk a little bit before we go into the preview of the game. The last two games we had, Ottawa and Toronto, we had an Ontario sweep, I guess you would say. We beat Ottawa 3-2, and then previous to that, we beat the Leafs 3-1. Any thoughts on those two games, real quick, before we get into the preview?
Well, I mean, I'm not surprised that we beat Toronto. I mean, Toronto's a team. They made a couple of trades. Not that I'm scared of Scott Laughton, and not that I was scared of Nicholas Waugh.
Yeah.
They weren't guys that you traditionally say, "Shit, I hope they don't get a Hattie against us." But they've made some changes, and when you make some changes, even if they're veteran guys, you're playing guys that aren't as experienced, and sometimes rookie mistakes lead to turnovers and chances.
Mhm.
But we were two teams going in different directions. We're a team that's still in the thick of, let's be honest, a division hunt, because we've caught Tampa. Buffalo's caught us both. The North Tonawanda dumpster fire has been put out, for lack of a better term. But we played a team. The Maple Leafs hadn't won a game since the Olympic break, and we beat them 3-1, and proved that they were still winless after playing us. So it was good to see us get back on the schneid, and stay at the top, contention with the division leaders.
Yeah, so I think they were pretty important games. I mean, obviously, games within the division, typical, 4-point swing, as they say, I think was pretty key. Like you said, Toronto's out of it, so it doesn't really matter. I think Ottawa's trying to fight for a playoff spot still. I don't know if they're still in the hunt, but, I think they're fading away fast. But they were important wins for us to keep us in that run up there with Tampa and Buffalo, to keep us into the reality of playoffs, because they started to slip a little bit, and we were down in a wild card spot there for a day or two. But again, that's going to change. Between now and the final game of the season, that's going to change 20 or 30 times, because of the way the tightness of the division. The advantage Montreal has, I think we have a couple games at hand on a few of these teams as well, which leads us into tonight's game against the Sharks, and then
Well, let's
tomorrow,
let's
tomorrow against Anaheim.
Well,
Uh,
let's backtrack, because we touched base on the Maple Leaf game. The Ottawa game was huge. Why was that huge? Earlier that day, General Manager Ken Hughes made the decision to recall Jacob Fowler from Laval.
mhm.
There was speculation. There was a few. If you listen to the Tony Marinaro Sick podcast and a few of the others, there was speculation that they had heard rumblings that this might happen. But until it becomes official by a Toronto sports channel, it's never official.
Yeah.
And the Toronto Sports Network and Sports Toronto Net, both of them, copied on the same story, and Fowler was recalled and was confirmed getting the start in Ottawa.
Mhm.
And again, you're talking about a hungry Ottawa team fighting to get into one of the bottom two wildcards. As you said, the conference is tight. Statistically speaking, top to bottom, even if you take the the three in our division plus the two wildcards, there's only like 8 points separating. So you're right. You can go from division leader one day to second wild card 2 games later because it's still that close.
Mhm.
So Ottawa came in, they'd made a couple of trades trying to solidify their roster, and we had the return of the Gator. So the Gator sighting was live and well. This time not in the ponds in Florida. This time on the ice in Ottawa, and I'll admit the kid played well.
Mhm.
It's nice to see him return. Clearly, he's worked on some things. He had a 9-2-1 record in Laval, hadn't lost a regular season game since like January in regulation time,
Mhm.
and he came in and he was lights out against Ottawa. I mean, he really, really was the reason that we won the game. So, what does were we expecting it? Probably because the statistics have been there,
Mhm.
and he was full value for his effort.
Well, I think he's in the NHL this year, isn't he? Like 10, 2, and 3 or something like that, like somebody and a 9,
Well,
12 save percentage or something.
I think he's 6-4-3 or 6-4-2. He's got, he's played his 13 or whatever number of games. Statistically speaking, he's got the highest save percentage and the lowest goals against average. His record just isn't reflective of
Okay.
the same benefit of
I
statistics.
must have been thinking about the AHL record then.
Yeah, so he's combined record. His numbers are fantastic.
Mhm.
It's just whether or not we were going to see him back in the big club, and
Mhm.
is
Well,
was
that
it was
trade they made that minor trade there yesterday or the day before where they sent Riley Kidney to Ottawa and picked up that goalie. That's sort of a telltale sign that they're bringing in help for the American Hockey League, which lets you to believe that Fowler's staying up with us for the rest of the year. So,
Yeah, that's my guess. My guess is he's not going back down. Um, Marty St. Louis and Kent Hughes both said the decision to bring him up and to start him right away was a critical point because they felt that the best way to get points was to play the best player. So that shows you that Sam Montem, no, we'll see probably no more ice time
well,
unless it's
let me throw
in
you
drinks on the plane.
let me throw you this one at you. If you go on Sportsnet's web, sportsnet.ca, go onto their website, go to the game tonight against the Sharks. They have listed as probable starter Fowler, which I think we're all pretty sure he's going to start.
Dobish is starting tonight, according to Daily Faceoff. It was confirmed yesterday.
Okay. Then Sportsnet is wrong. Surprise.
It's Toronto. They don't get anything right.
Yeah. And I hope they're wrong because if you fast forward to Sunday night's game, they have Monty as the probable starter for that game. So he better not be, like you say, he better be gone to Brazil picking coffee because we don't want him nowhere. Oh,
I hope I hope that somebody has challenged him and said, if you can figure out how to get the caramel in a caramel bar, you can start the next game. So it might take him a hot minute.
yeah. And nobody knows that secret, I don't think. Yeah. Okay.
Hence my point.
Yeah. Um, so we have Sharks and Ducks coming up, as we talked about. What do you expect, or what would you like to see score wise, win wise?
Well, again, the last time, we seem to go through the motions of these Western home and homes with teams, with a week in between. We were just in Anaheim and San Jose and played them both within the last 2 weeks of calendar season. We lost a very bizarre game to San Jose 7-5. I'm sure if you questioned anybody that played that game, they couldn't figure out why it went that way, including the other Jacob Dobish, who let in 7 goals and not his best effort. And that's probably been the knack to Mr. Dobish in his young career is stringing together 3, 4, and 5 game starts with confidence. But we also know that rookies are gonna proverbial shit the bed every once in a while.
Mhm.
He Austin Matthew that one and just was not his best. And that's okay. So he gets the start back in Montreal tonight. A couple things work in our advantage. Obviously, the home ice crowd. When we're winning, they're jacked and they're the loudest building in the league. So that's always a good thing. A redemption game for Dobish to try and prove the naysayers wrong,
Yeah.
and we get home ice advantage, so we do get the last change, and that becomes monumental when you're going matchups. And last game, Macklin Celebrini had a goal and 3 assists. So if we can limit his chances, I think we win the game. Do I think we're going to shut them out? A good buddy of mine challenged me and thinks it's going to be a 4-0 Montreal win. Vinny, I think you're wrong. I think this is probably a 3-4-1 type of game.
Mhm.
And I think it'll be close going into the third period.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's going to be a tighter game. Um, again, if you, I think the whole key to that is Celebrini. If you can keep him under control and watch him, because he's a pretty deceptive young kid. Like he's a fantastic player. He just seems to have the smarts and the brains. You know, he knows where to be. He knows what to do, and it's almost like something that like you can't coach that. He just has it naturally. He just woke up one day as a kid and said, "Hey, I can do this," and nobody had to show me how to do it.
Yeah, and I mean the thing with him is it's almost like he doesn't know different at 19 years of age. It's like he's just playing with his buddies or against his buddies' dads per se, because he's out there having fun. And when you're having fun and you don't think of it as a job and there's no pressure, you succeed. Now this is again hockey night in Canada type mentality. He's going into Montreal for the big game. The Sharks are trying to clamor for points. So we just we need to put a bit of chum in the water and go shark fishing and put this baby to bed early.
Yeah. Um,
So one quick note to the game, there's a secondary byline to tonight's game. So it was reported this morning that Coach Marty St. Louis has decided that Brendan Gallagher would be a healthy scratch for the first time in his career.
mhm.
And of course, that will meet the ire of many because we all know this. Galley has a large following. Personally, I'm a big fan. Met him when I was living down in Arizona, and the Habs were in town. He gave me and my buddy 20 minutes of his time. Stood there, had a nice conversation. Super good guy, and we know that over the last 10 plus years, Galley ultimately wears his heart on his sleeve. His blood, sweat, tears, DNA goes into everything he does. He is the prototypical Montreal Canadian who just wants to win for the franchise.
Mhm.
So a little bit of a sad by story to this, but it shouldn't come as any surprise that he is the next man up to have a rest.
Yeah.
His ice time the previous game against Ottawa was 8 minutes and 12 seconds or some foolish thing, just under 9 minutes. So when he's not playing, you knew it was just a matter of time.
Yeah. And we've been predicting this since I think you and I have talked about this on this show since probably November, maybe even sooner that this was and both of us are on the same page. We love the guy, like he's done so much for the team. Uh and the players in the room love him. They just think he's the greatest thing since sliced bread, his fellow teammates, because of the passion he brings, because of the no quit attitude, because of you know what I mean? He's like you could cut his left leg off. That's not going to stop him. He's going to pick his left leg up and run into that battle. That's just who he is. And I've never met him, but you just got to look at the way he's played over the last 20 years or 15 years to see that that's who he is. He's generally that guy. And it does hurt to see him sit, but for the better of the team, we got to ice the players that are going to get us the win. That's just how it is.
Right. And this was we talked about this before. This was just a matter of time, meaning as all these players came healthy, the trade deadline came and went and
Mhm.
none of the players went. It was just going to be a matter of time before some of the players were told enjoy the popcorn tonight and we'll see what we can do.
Mhm.
I suspect that this is a rotation thing. From what I've read, he's already been told he'll be back in the lineup against the Ducks.
Yeah.
So who does that mean the odd man out is moving forward? Is it back to Texier? Is he in one, out one, in two, out one?
Mhm.
Is Bolduc the guy out of the game? If he doesn't have a stellar game, what if Bolduc scores 2 goals tonight? Do
Mhm.
you take him out when he's riding a heater? I mean, confidence in the wave of emotions is what's going to carry us because we need to get points where we get points. So, it will be interesting. And then you've still got Valeno and Line that aren't there, and some of the other band of merry men. Some of them aren't going to be so merry, but it's unfortunate, like you say. because he's the prototypical player that everybody wants to emulate their career on. Nobody's going to tell me I'm not good enough. Nobody's going to tell me I'm not big enough. And that kid has found a way to be in the game, wears a letter on his shirt, and has been a prototypical player and a teammate's teammate
Mhm.
all these years. So it's unfortunate but necessary. Father time is catching up to him and his game, and he's been a guy badly beaten over the years. So sad, but like you said, reality is what reality is, and you
Yeah.
know maybe it's this is the start of the load management issues with Montreal, that
Yeah.
they can rest the third and fourth line guys and give everybody kind of a night off so that we can get the most out of everybody going into the stretch drive.
Well, if you look at it as the glass half full thing, try to look on the positive side. That could be exactly what it is. The positive part. We have the the fortune of having three, four, five guys that we can rotate through, which means Gallagher gets his rest tonight, Texier tomorrow, Bolduc the next game, or however you want to do it. But it gives a guy like Gallagher, you know, more rest. It gives them time to refuel the tank and prolong that need, because there might be a game in the playoffs come where we need that type of player to go and grind in the corners because, you know, he's 5'2" tall, but he's the biggest guy standing in front of the net at times. And playoff hockey, you need that. You have to have that guy that's going to go in there and take the beating and get that garbage goal in front of the net.
You need the next man up mentality to be ready to go next man up. It's
Mhm.
nice to say next man up, but if that guy hasn't saw the ice in 8 games, is
Mhm.
he really ready to go next man up?
Yeah.
So if we're rotating 3 or 4 guys through that one spot, everybody's sharp and ready. So if someone should get a puck to the cheek, or a slash across the wrist, or block a slap shot and need
Mhm.
a therapy day, we've got guys that are there, that are dressed, that are ready, that are capable of stepping right in without missing a beat because they've been game ready the entire time. So a little bit of a pro and con to the situation. I like to think of it as a pro, not a con,
Mhm.
because we have current active prepared depth
Mhm.
as we move forward.
Yeah. Let's do a little bit of a bonus trivia question. I'm going to throw one at you this time.
Uh-oh.
Brendan
Two
Gallagher,
plus two plus two is four, I think.
four. Oh, I got that one wrong. Hold on a minute. Uh, Brendan Gallagher, first NHL game with the Montreal Canadiens.
Oh boy, I'm gonna have to go back because I don't. This might be. Well, I'm gonna go back to probably
I'll
um,
tell you, it's not as far back as I thought it was before I looked it up.
2013.
It's exactly right. January 22nd, 2013, lockout shortened season. He made his debut uh, as a rookie, obviously his first game debut, and it's been all it's been all race cars and superstars since then for him, up until tonight. This will be the first game he's sitting out as a healthy scratch. We all know over the years he's had many injuries because of that's just the way he plays, the type of player he is. He sacrifices everything to get that win, to get that goal, to get whatever it takes. So, it's sad that it's going to happen. But if you look on the bright side, we've got a lot of young stars coming up that are going to take that spot and play well, and the team's just going to keep elevating and getting better. But like you say, unfortunately, at the expense of Brendan Gallagher, good old Gally, the guy we all love. Uh,
But like you say, he's going to be back in the lineup against the Ducks.
mhm,
That would be the second game of the home, the back to back. I would expect Fowler to start that one. I don't see a scenario where Monty plays, to be honest.
mhm,
Um, and we have another surprise to the game story. Radko Gudis was just recently suspended 5 games in a nasty collision with Maple Leafs so-called superstar Austin Matthews. So he's out 5 games. It sucks for Matthews. We'll just keep it at that. Good for us that he's suspended. He is
Hmm.
a guy that is, you got to keep your head up when you're circling around that blue line.
Hmm.
So, for some of our more fleet of foot players, whether that's Hudson or Caulfield or Suzuki, guys like that that are, medium to smaller build type of players who are not aggressive players,
Yeah.
that's one guy they don't have to worry about.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I agree 100%. Um, so let's talk more. Let's expand more on our goalie conversation. We had talked about Fowler being called up and things like that, and what's happening. But what do you think is happening with Monty? I think you had mentioned earlier about the what's the good point of a three goalie rotation, and I didn't see it until you mentioned it earlier in our discussion talking about the advantage of it.
So, I feel, I'm not a fan of Monty. I'm not.
Mhm.
But,
Color me
let's be honest.
surprised.
Yeah, let's be honest. Nobody at any point in any sport, basketball, field hockey, lacrosse, you name it. Nobody likes to be told, "Sorry, son, you're not good enough to play."
Mhm.
They are trained professionals, but they're not trained in psychology. Nobody's ready for that. And to have him have his perceived fall from grace is, unfortunately, on a professional level, tough to watch and go through. He's had a little bit of an up and down year. At times it looks like he's the best goalie in the rink, and
Mhm.
then other times it looks like he has no idea what a hockey puck is.
But that's not game to game. That's period to period with him. Like the game I
Yes,
was at in Montreal and he played, he made saves that nobody had any business saving. But the next one was a beach ball going past him at 3 miles an hour that I could have stopped. You know what I mean? Like
right.
that's what I think that's what frustrates me so much about him is you see at times flashings of brilliance, but then 5 minutes later you're like, you know what? Go on that coffee run, buddy, because you don't deserve to be there. That's what
Yeah,
frustrates.
and that's part of what the perceived disconnect with him is he struggled to maintain consistency. They don't know if it's an eyesight thing. I heard maybe it's a vertigo based thing that his head, just as he moves around, so they thought it might have been a head cold or like an influenza thing where too much sudden movement up and down and he just kind of lost his balance or his coordination, which affected his ability to see the puck from long range. There's been a number of things. So we are back to the three goalie rotation, that three-headed monster that we started at one point with.
Mhm.
So what does that mean? If I read between the lines, they have no intention of playing Monty, or they would have kept him active in the lineup. So where does that benefit Monty? Well, he's going to get one-on-one. He's still going to get the goaltending coaching, and in case we need him, an injury happens and we still need him. Even in a backup role, we would need him. So he's going to still get that ice. It gives the benefit. Where's the benefit? The benefit to the Montreal Canadiens is this: it gives that game day goalie a little bit of a rep break in practice. On game day skates or those morning practices, we have a third goalie on the ice. So if the starter doesn't feel like taking as much action, the team still gets two goalies. So there's that added benefit for practices. There's always going to be two goalies on the ice. Um, Travel and time are going to be important factors for us every game moving forward. The benefit is Monty going to play? I hope not, but it means he could dress. And what that means is, if we are playing in Boston tonight and Carolina tomorrow, maybe we send Fowler a day early so he gets there, the travel fatigue, he gets comfortable, he gets his favorite meal in, he doesn't have to be late night on a plane. There is an element that could benefit that starting goalie.
Mhm.
So, it doesn't necessarily mean it would happen every time. But if we have the occasional Midwest kind of game where they got to travel in a time zone jump, or we have the ability to pre-send a goalie there. So that could be the benefit in the whole thing, and takes the pressure off
Mhm.
knowing who's going to start, because he would get that information a couple days in advance. You're
Mhm.
starting in Thursday in Carolina, so we're going to send you a day early.
Yeah. Get there and get set up. Yeah.
So it's a
Um,
mentality as well.
yeah. So I think with Monty, with Sammy, there's three scenarios that basically we're looking at now of possibilities. One, he stays with us, does the three goalie rotation. Other than the because until you mentioned that to me earlier about the pre-travel idea, it didn't make sense to me. But now it does. I don't know that I still like it or not, but like you say, if he's just there as the backup and he doesn't actually play, then I can see the advantage to that, but it scares me that Monty's going to get or St. Louis is going to get tempted to throw him in, and that scares me. But there are still two other options available that a lot of people don't understand. One is, just because the trade deadline has passed doesn't mean he still can't be traded. He could be traded to a non-playoff team that it doesn't affect them anyways, whether it be for, some kind of a future consideration, a draft pick. Because if we're going to trade him, we have to send something else with him. We're going to have to send Monty and a, first or second round pick for a fifth or sixth round pick back. It's going to be that type of a deal. I know we've talked about it previously. So, I mean, that could be a team that, wants to, get this year's draft pick, get a chance at McKenna. There's two or three guys now that could be number one picks. But another option is sending him down. He would have to clear waivers to go to the AHL, which is probably less likely now with the Ottawa trade bringing in the goalie. Um, but I mean, if you send him down and he gets picked up on waivers, is anybody really going to be upset? Right?
Well,
Look at it
I
that way.
think the asset management part of that is you don't want to lose a player for nothing.
Mhm,
And that's why it hasn't been done.
mhm,
They obviously see that there's a value in Monty, whether it's now or next year, there's a value in trading him. Am I worried from my fans' point of view if we lose him for nothing, if we put him on waivers? I'm not worried at all.
mhm,
Right. I mean, but because I see the benefit of freeing up the salary cap. Now, the salary cap doesn't happen, doesn't, it matters for the playoffs. So we still have to be cap compliant, which we are.
mhm,
But like you said, trades could still happen. They're very rare at this time of the year at the NHL level, but
mhm,
they could happen. The trade deadline just signifies that any players traded on or before that are playoff eligible for their new teams.
mhm,
If a trade was to happen tomorrow where we sent Sam Montembeau to Chicago and we got a bucket of chicken and a deep dish pizza,
mhm.
yeah, the team benefits from the meal, but he's not playing in the playoffs. He's not eligible for the playoffs, so it doesn't really matter,
Yeah.
right? So that's the only significance. So I don't think a playoff team would want that, but maybe again, like a Chicago, maybe they're at the bottom of the standings. They don't feel the need to bring up an AHL kid, or maybe they have two or three goalies suffer injuries, and the easiest thing is, hey, Monty can be part of our team next year, so let's make the deal for him now. So is it likely to happen? No.
Mhm.
I would just much rather them send him to the minors, and if he got claimed, it's sayonara, adios, means goodbye.
Yeah.
Personally, because to be fair to him, he deserves to be playing somewhere. And if that was what happened, and if he didn't, then oh well, we lose him, and he wasn't part of the solution anyways.
Yeah. Well, and it frees up 3 million in contract space for a future deal in the
Yeah,
summer, right? So
yeah,
I
I
think
see him.
I think big moves coming in the summer, to be honest with
Yeah,
you. They talked about revisiting this, mystery trade that didn't happen. That's talking about getting revisited in the summer. So you're going to have Line numbers off the books, potentially Monty's numbers off the books, whatever happens. I think there's a few scenarios that can happen there, but long term, three goalies isn't the solution. One of them is
yeah,
going, and
he's
it has to be Monty, right?
he's not back next year. I don't see any scenario that he's not back next year, barring any mystery illness that some guy should wake up and can't see out of his left eye, and whatever else. I just there's no scenario that I don't think that Monty's part of our goalie future, and that's why I say I don't think they put him on waivers for that reason. I think they can revisit this. Maybe it's part of a bigger deal where they can send him and other assets, because we seem to think about the immediate, what can somebody do for me today?
Mhm.
What we don't know, and I don't care to speculate, is what teams have goalies on expiring contracts for next year, and are they going to want to take a chance on getting a free agent, or is that trade going to happen in the offseason where they know they can get Monty for a fourth round pick, and we're just going to send him over so they get the benefit of getting a goalie? So, those might have been discussions that were previously had that fell apart, and we'll get revisited by our management team, maybe trade day. or draft day.
Yeah. So before we get into final thoughts, I just want to bring up something as a little bit of a side note here that I know is a big frustration for you and I living behind enemy lines. I mean, this is what it's all about for us. You know, two kids growing up in the South Shore, living in the Toronto market, and having to deal with the Toronto media. Since the Austin Matthews injury, I've seen a lot of reels. I've seen a lot of fan things put up about they've got this. I don't even know how to put it in words without swearing, but there's this stupid idea going around now that Toronto is going to trade, get this, Matthew Nyes to Edmonton for Connor McDavid because they want to bring Connor McDavid home. He's a Toronto boy. You know that, you know the typical story. He's a Toronto boy. He wants to come home. He want this where like first of all, if you're a Toronto fan and you're putting that on your thing, stop it. You look like a fucking retard. I don't know how to explain it any better than that. And I'm sure I've pissed off and offended somebody, but stop it. You look like an idiot. Sorry, that's my rant for the day.
I'm sure Trevor or Jamal or Akbar have been selling bath salts on the corner somewhere, and they have flown off the market. You know, there is an I mean, it's an uncanny amount of fantasy hockey trades going on. You know, and again, I don't normally like to speculate every single detail of every single trade, but under no fantasy does Edmonton going to trade McDavid to only get Matthew Nyes back.
Mhm.
You know, they don't want Morgan Riley. Morgan Riley is the modern day Dion Phaneuf. Okay,
He's the defensive Sam Montembeau of defense.
when you let Matthew, when you let Philippe Deneau skate by you in quicksand and
Yeah,
beat you to a puck and score a goal
yeah.
at this stage in your career on rivalry night, Morgan Riley has no business wearing an NHL jersey. He's not a top four in Toronto. He's not a top four in any team.
Mhm.
So, you know, the fantasy trade, unless you're really going to sit down and dissect it and say, in order to get Austin Matthews or in order to get Connor McDavid, is Austin Matthews going to go the other way?
Mhm.
Is it Austin Matthews and Matthew Nyes for Connor McDavid and, you know, Darnell Nurse? You could put together a fantasy hockey trade and say, that would work, change the scenery, bring the Toronto kid home, you know, and make him play in front of his parents, his friends and family,
Mhm.
the team he grew up idolizing. And it's a feel good story. It really is. But man, oh man, we got to stop with this. We're giving up, you know, the rights to Yuri Sira and Mike Palmateer's goalie pads for Connor McDavid. It's
Mhm.
not happening,
Mhm.
right? You know, that being said, let's revisit the trade that didn't, and that's been in the media that we were trading to get Matthew Nyes.
Mhm.
Okay, wonderful. I'd love if that was the case, and that's going to happen in the offseason. And apparently now every Maple Leaf fan wants to admit or self-profess that the trade that Montreal had offered was Michael Hage for Matthew Nyes.
Mhm. I don't
on
like that
on
one.
paper on
Mhm.
paper it sounds like that would be a good one. Send a prospect for a proven guy at $7 million. But
Mhm.
we kind of touched base on this before we went so-called live and into production mode here about, is Michael Hage going to make a debut with the Montreal Canadiens?
Mhm.
We know that if the sun, the moon, the stars, and the remainder of the galaxy, you know, aligns, there is a slim chance, but a realistic chance that Michael Hage plays a game or five for Montreal before the end of the year. The Frozen Four dates would end on like the 10th, and our season ends on the 16th. I think there's 2 or 3 games in that window. Now, if Michigan should lose prior to, there's a longer window. We all have seen the reels, the TikToks, the draft specials. We know the history of his dad, his mom and dad being Montreal natives, Montreal fans their entire life, how that family sacrificed for them to play sports and for him to play hockey. They've moved him all over the place trying to get, believe it or not, folks, outside of the GTL, which is a Greater Toronto Hockey League. He went to play Chicago high school hockey. Like, he's been all over trying to get the best opportunity.
Mhm.
There is not going to be one dry eye in the building when
Mhm.
that guy puts on a Montreal jersey and does his pre-game lap.
Well,
Like,
I'll guarantee you it's going to happen this year. The
it's going
only
to
thing
happen.
is, The only thing is, does it happen end of March? Does it happen in 2 weeks because Michigan puts out early? Or does it happen after April 11th, which is the final of the Frozen Four, and then he can get in for he will be in Montreal for one game this year, minimum.
Yep.
Guaranteed it's going to happen. But like you say, it could be, might get 2 or 3 or 4 games in, who knows? But he will absolutely be there this year, and he will burn off the first year of his entry level contract. It's just a matter number
If
of
he
games.
only if he only plays less than 9 games, he doesn't burn it.
Oh no, I don't think so.
No, because that no,
Oh,
I think you
playoffs,
have yeah,
playoffs.
because of playoffs,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we 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 have to assume that at that point he only plays a certain number of games and he'll
Mhm.
get sent down to Laval. He'll
Mhm.
sign his entry level deal and go to Laval and help them for a longer playoff run,
Mhm.
hopefully. But he's gonna get games.
Mhm.
Here's the interesting conundrum. Would you ever trade a guy who he was a late round 21st pick overall? Is he worth trading for a guy who's a proven regular NHL
Mhm.
bona fide kind of player? Is that worth it? We think Hage is going to have a great career. What if he doesn't?
Mhm.
This could be the trade that kills us,
Mhm.
right? I mean, but is that risk reward worth it? I don't think so right now.
Mhm.
That could be revisited in the offseason. Maybe we keeping him and we let him play his 2, 3, 5, whatever games, and then in the offseason he's traded to Toronto
Mhm.
because he's a hometown Toronto kid. That could happen. It could have a different Cinderella story where he gets two Cinderella stories in one calendar year. I just don't see it. That I don't think that's realistically the trade that Toronto was trying to land. Might have been, but we weren't. We're
Yeah.
not
Well,
and won't.
and here's my thing, which gets me back to my original point about the McDavid thing. If you think, and I don't mean you specifically when I say you
Right.
people, uh,
You people.
yeah, when I
He's been
say that,
banned. Be
if
careful.
if fans think, and Toronto fans in particular think you're going to trade McDavid for Knies straight up, put away the smelling salts because you're just not dialed in. It's going to take a package basically. Toronto does not have that package. They've got really nobody in the system. They don't have any draft picks that are, what little draft picks they have left. You might as well throw me and my three broken ankles into the scenario because that's about all. Like Toronto does not have the package to send to Edmonton to get McDavid out of there, right? Why would McDavid then want to turn around and come here if he's given a hometown discount to stay in Edmonton to win that cup? And as close as they've come the last 2 years, you see the passion he has. Do you think he's going to agree to come to Toronto to rebuild and start over again? That's just asinine. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Then finally, on top of that, you're now getting back into the same problem of putting so much money into one player. Like Toronto's problem for years has been Matthews 13, 14 million, Nylander getting his 11 or 12, what's his name, the
Bear.
Vegas boy, uh,
Marner.
Marner getting 11, 12 million. Tavares was at what, 9 or 10 million. You had over half your
Morgan
salary
Riley. Yep.
cap locked up into four guys, right?
Yeah.
Well, if
Yeah.
you're sending out one Nyes, who you have a cap manageable number on at seven, what's he, 7.1 million, I think, something like that,
I
seven
think
and a
he's
half,
set a 7.25 or seven three
something like
five,
that,
something
right?
like that.
For 7 years to bring in McDavid, who at 12 million this year and next year, but he's going to go back up to 13, 14 million after that. Then it just goes to show Toronto would never learn. Even since 1967, Toronto hasn't figured it out on how to build a team. You can't do it on one superstar. You have to do it over, five, six, seven, eight players.
Right. I mean, the only way that scenario works is if you make a package deal where Nylander goes one way,
Mhm.
which would be a mistake,
Mhm.
and you acquire the rights to McDavid, and he turns around and signs another 2 year deal with Toronto at 11 million, takes a
Sure.
little bit more of a cut to
Yeah.
play in Toronto.
Mhm.
When the cap goes up to give them more room, and the star power of him playing with Matthews, and then having Matthew Nyes there and a few of the others,
Mhm.
and at that point, maybe them making another trade or two and acquiring a couple more picks or free agents to come in. But I don't see it happening.
Mhm.
Right now, if I looked at Connor McDavid and said, where do I think he ends up after Edmonton? If he's a free agent and he has the ability to walk, San Jose.
Mhm.
He can go to a team that's got Will Smith, Macklin Celebrini, and Askarov and net, and a cast of characters that are young guys, and guys that are willing to come there to play in the sun in relative anonymity. And I think there's some lessons to be learned. Mike Greer is trying to build a good team there.
Yeah,
Hats off to him. He clearly didn't learn how to build a good team playing in Buffalo, but
yeah,
he's turned that around to build a better team in San Jose, because they are a lot more competitive this year than
yeah,
anybody would ever give him credit for,
yeah.
as early as he's done it with young players.
Yeah. And another team I wouldn't take out of that equation, because it doesn't matter. They could be up against the cap right down to the last nickel. They always find a way, is Las Vegas. I think he would do good in Las Vegas playing with Jack Eichel, Marner, all them guys. I think he would just fit in there. That would be that would make them the perennial powerhouse. It would be crazy how good they're. I'm not sure how they would do it, but Vegas always seems to they always seem to hit blackjack at the table. They always seem
Well,
to figure out a way to make it happen.
there's if you're going to throw Vegas into that mix, I'm going to throw you one more, the Dallas Stars, because
Hmm.
they're another team that the salary cap doesn't apply to them the same as it does with Canadian teams because of their tax break. So you only pay a federal income tax, no state income tax.
Hmm.
And you've got guys like Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin that'll come off the books. Seguin's done this year,
Hmm.
after this year, and he's been hurt. So I don't see a scenario where they bring him back. They'll probably re-sign Ben for another 1 year deal.
Hmm.
Could you see the following year, if McDavid's a free agent, them throwing a good 10 million at him and say, look, come to Dallas, play for 10 million. You're going to keep more of that 10 than you did keeping 14 in Edmonton. And
Hmm.
we're still going to build, because Jim Nill has proven that he's willing to get as much in as it takes to try and win. I see that as a very healthy scenario, because
Hmm.
they've got such a good young team anyways. But I mean, these are all speculation. Why wouldn't he come to Montreal if he wants to win and stay in Canada? Because it ain't going to be with the Blue Maple Leaf.
Hmm. Well,
So
the problem is, again, Montreal's not going to pay him $10 million, right?
no,
Not that he's
no,
not deserving it. It's just not in their plans. I just don't see how you can justify giving Nick Suzuki his 7.8
point
million,
eight. Yeah,
and then all of a sudden you're going to bring in Connor McDavid at 11, $12 million. And don't get me wrong, he's the greatest player in the world. He deserves it. But you're starting to get down a path, and I think a lot of the players, the NHL players, are starting to see it. Oh, wow, top salary. We can get, what is it now? 14 million, I think you can get it be highest pay, according to the CBA. Oh, I want my $14 million. But then when they see, okay, well, my team can't afford to get anybody to play with me, what's the point of getting $14 million when in essence you could take that 14 and get two $7 million players? So now you got Suzuki and Caulfield as opposed to just one, right? I think
right.
players are starting to wake up to that.
Well, I think teams are starting to wake up to that, because, as Hughes and Gordon have said, is we're trying to build a culture in a 10-year window.
Mhm.
And how do you build a 10-year window? You sign guys to long-term contracts, so the window of opportunity is extended.
Mhm.
You sign them to friendly contracts, because if they don't work out for you, they can be moved. Because let's be honest, we're not trading Slav tomorrow
Mhm.
because he's on fire. But what if 2 years down the road, he just needed to change a scenery? His $7.5 million 2 years from now, when salaries could be 16 and 17 million, that's a bargain.
Mhm.
Someone's taking that salary all day. And I think that's what they've done, is they've not just done load management to the salary cap. It's been asset management to future deals in case we have to move any of them.
Mhm.
And with that being said, if the cap goes up 3 million or 5 million this year, 2 million or 3 million the next year, 3 or 4 years down the road, when Dobson, Hudson, Suzuki, Caulfield, Slavkovsky, all these guys have fit in, we can still add another one or two $8 or $9 million guys.
Mhm.
Why couldn't we do that? Because we are getting young pieces in, the Demidovs and maybe the Michael Hages and the Zarovskis coming in, that will all be on their entry level deals.
Mhm.
Demidov will be coming out of his, but Zarovsky and Hage could be going in, whereas we still have room to add, and we're going to lose the likes of an Anderson, a Gallagher, and a Line. We could add three more guys and still have all. I mean, we have the ability to do so much with the cap and the assets that we really could make a bigger splash longer term.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
and this is what, some of the other markets have not figured out. You just can't throw all your money in one basket. It doesn't work.
mhm. Well, look at it this way. I think this year, you've got five Habs players right now that have 50 points, right? Which is the first time I don't know that it's ever
It's
happened.
been a hot minute since that happened.
Um, but you talk about like the salary management and what I've talked about, that 7.5 million range, 8 million range. Uh, Liney's off the books next year,
Yeah.
regardless. Henderson's off the books next year, regardless. Uh, Galley, I think, is the year after that, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So you've got Patrick Liney at 8.7. I think Anderson 6.5, and I think Galley 6 or 6.5 as
Six
well.
and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's 20
between
million.
right. But you look at, let's just say, for argument's sake, our top five or six players right now are on an average of $8 million a year salary. If you add in like Noah Dobson's nine and a
Yep.
half,
Yep.
whatever, right? So we've got a couple players that need to be signed to long-term deals, i.e. Demidov, right? So Demidov's going to get that 7, 8, 8.5 million range for sure. Cap going up. I suspect he's going to be more in the 8.5, 9 million range, right? So that
You're gonna
takes
have
Liney out.
Oliver Kapanen's gonna at that point be one more year away from
Yeah, and he's
his
probably
number.
going
And
to be in the 4 or 5 million range, I would say. Would you agree with that? That's
I
reasonable.
think he's going to be 5, 6 million, unless he starts putting up stellar numbers where he
Yeah.
can get into the lower part of the tier one
Mhm.
salaries. I don't think
Yeah.
he's got that superstar esque kind of statistical impact to get up there.
Yeah.
But again, he could mature and all of a sudden next year have a
Boom.
same
Yeah.
kind of season and boom, next thing
Yeah.
you know, he's
So
30 goals, 40 assists. You're like, well, we're gonna have to pay the kid.
yeah. So after all is said and done, with the money that's coming off, the money we're going to have to do to sign, guys coming out of their entry level deal. Plus, we've got, Hage coming. Reinbacker's another one who's apparently he's just chomping at the bit. They say he's ready to go. There's just nowhere room for him here. Hage, Zorowski, you got young guys that are going to come up that can still play at minimum salaries that will help out us too. I still see us having the salary cap space to sign a big free agent this year in the
Yep.
eight to 9 million
Yep.
range, whoever that may be. I mean, it's obviously not going to be a McDavid or, Drysdale, somebody like that, but, or maybe there's a trade. Nice. Who knows, right? But I just see, again, teams getting stuck in that thing of paying one or two players 14 million each, and there's nothing left to give to anybody else.
Yeah, we just signed also, if you haven't caught it, Casey Middlestat. Um,
Yeah.
we signed him. He was, I think, captain defenseman for the Minnesota Golden Gophers. I think he just signed an entry level deal and will go to Laval. We've got an injection of youth, and this is the time of year. And do I think we're going to be heavy hitters in it? No, but there is a time that's coming up within the next 2 weeks where there's going to be a lot of college free agents that as soon as their season are over are going to start signing deals across the league. Do I expect Montreal to get any? Maybe one, maybe.
I
But
expect they're going to sign one.
the Leafs, there's talk that they're in on two Russian kids that are playing college hockey that were not drafted.
Mhm.
Tee off and summer off.
Yeah.
They're big ones they'll come in there. Closely related to whack off and jacking off because that's what their fan base is doing. But we are going to start to see some more moves, and like you say, asset growth and asset development that could lead into a bigger trade in the offseason. And whether or not that's the free agent, but it could be the opening or the preface to a bigger deal. So
Mhm.
I still think there's a bigger deal coming. I think we have the ability to add. Management has already said they want to go down that road. So this offseason should be another good one. Remember what we did last year at the draft.
Yeah.
16th and
So
17th pick with Emil Heineman, and we got Noah Dobson. And if I'm an NHL general manager, I do that trade 11 out of 10 times all over again.
yeah. So you mentioned about the uh pending upcoming free agents in college and in minors and stuff like that. There's one that's coming up that's very interesting to us who I can see us signing, if for no other reason, the feel good story of it is Nick Suzuki's brother Ryan, right now playing with Chicago Wolves. Apparently, he's going to be a UFA this year, at the end of this year, and it doesn't look like Chicago's interested in re-signing. Whatever, I don't know, but uh, whether he's interested or not, but this year, 53 games with Chicago. He's got 11 goals, 33 assists, 44 points. So, he can score. He's not
I,
a
I,
he's
I
not
can
a
see him.
he's not a player that, riding off his brother's coattails. He's got a little bit of skill to him, and I think it would be a pretty interesting story if Montreal could sign him, give him a shot, see what happens.
Even if he's signed and he's just an AHL guy, I could see that happening. I mean, there's some camaraderie to having your brother and your family close by. Your parents are in town more often if both guys are there. They can go to a Laval Rocket game one night, a Montreal game the next night. The brothers can be together. I mean, Christmas is easy in Quebec at that point. There's still a feel good. There's still a feel good story there. We got the Jack brothers, so well, why not? So and the kid has been proven to have decent minor league statistics. Puzzling why he hasn't got a better shot in the NHL. Something's got to be there. Maybe he just needs a fresh start with the right organization.
Change of scenery, yeah. Okay, final thoughts. What do you hit me with some final thoughts?
Um, Final thoughts. These two games against the California teams are big ones. We look at the schedule moving forward. We didn't really touch base on it where we are. We're third right now in the conference. We have drawn even in games played with Tampa, which is a good thing. Um, Detroit is right behind us, as is Tampa and Ottawa and Columbus. But as far as the third team in our division, Boston's right there, Ottawa's right there, Detroit's right there. Detroit has just lost Captain Dylan Larkin to a 2-week injury. That's going to be a significant blow for them. We get Anaheim or we get San Jose tonight. Detroit gets Dallas.
Whew.
So some big games. We need Lady Luck to be on our side for a few results. And I'm okay with that, but we are in the driver's seat. We control our own destiny. Much like last year after the trade deadline, when the captain's captain made a bold statement. He said that he believes this team has what it takes to contend for the Atlantic Division.
Mhm.
He obviously has faith in his shipmates like he did last year. So I expect a strong finish to the season. I think there's no reason we can't win both of these games and claim the 4 points that we should have got in the West. So I'm looking for two good efforts this weekend.
Mhm.
So there's nothing telling me we shouldn't get 4 points. I believe we get 4 points.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think we got 18 games left, I think, this year. I don't see why we can't win, 10 or 12 of them games to finish out the year. 12 for sure, I think is a more realistic number. Um, Looking ahead to further down the road, I think we have next week, we have a game against Boston Tuesday, I believe, and then Thursday against Detroit. So that's two big in division in conference games coming up. Detroit, a team that we're you know trying to keep pace or move ahead of. Um, so I think there's some pretty crucial games coming up. My final thoughts, I really only have one final thought. While we're playing San Jose tonight, Toronto's playing Buffalo. Are we cheering for Toronto tonight? What are we doing? I'm on the fence. I don't know what to do here.
Hang on a second. I gotta call my cardiologist to make sure the heart meds are in store for this. But yes, this is the unfortunate time, and we will delete this part of the episode from the archive vaults. I will cheer for the Maple Leafs tonight.
Yeah.
If the hockey gods are gonna shine down on us, we need a Buffalo Sabres loss.
Mhm.
And in regulation. Stranger things have happened. Maybe they go in overconfident, but this is the time of the season where you start cheering for teams that you normally don't cheer for
Yeah.
because we need the help in our division.
Yeah. So you might never hear it again, but go Leafs go. And I'm sure if they'll find a way to blow it for us somehow, like they always do. But anyways, yeah, so that's pretty much concludes tonight's episode. Uh, let's go back to Steve for a trivia answer.
So you were right when when was the last time Montreal had three goalies play more than 10 games in the same season? We don't have to go back very far. 23-24 season, we had the three goalie monster that was even worse that year, believe it or not, because we had Sam Montembeault.
Mhm.
You believe you know the other two. Do you know who they are?
Yeah, Caden Primo and Jake
Correct.
Allen.
And Jake Allen.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, all three goalies played 20 games.
Yeah.
Jake Allen played the least. He played 21. Primo
Wow.
played 23 or in 23, not full 20, 21. And then Sammy played 41.
Yeah.
So we had and that year was not a good year for us. Sammy was the only goalie with a winning record.
Mhm.
Believe it or not, Jake Allen had the fewest wins of six. Caden Primo had eight.
Mhm.
But yeah, and who was the coach that year? Marty St. Louis.
Mhm.
So, a guy who's all too familiar with doing this. So maybe he's got a perfection in his non-traditional traditional approach to this that we just have to trust him.
Yeah. Well, I love the guy, but I just can't wrap my head around Monty keep getting games. I don't know what it is. I'll never understand it. But anyways, having said that, that's going to wrap up tonight's episode. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please remember to hit the like, share, subscribe button, comment. Let us know what you think. Hit the buttons. It helps us with our algorithm, gets us up into the viewership. We're at 48 subscribers right now. We need two more to get to 50. We're climbing up to the half century mark.
We are knocking on the doors, and we do appreciate this for those that take the time to listen and share and follow. Please, please do so. It's a lot of fun, and we do hear from some of you from time to time, whether it's individual Facebook or messenger message or text message. I've had a couple of buddies call me, with some odd requests and whatnot. So, we're trying to expand this platform to be something of a regular occurrence for people. And one of the things that we are working on is another guest host. We won't tip off who that may or may not be.
We'll just give off one little tip. We're going to go from behind enemy lines to sleeping with the enemy. That's our tip.
Fair enough. So you'll have to tune in for future episodes, and we're hoping we can pull this off sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And I will give one more little hint. She is a riot. If you've
Mhm.
seen any of her stuff on Facebook Reels and TikTok, she is an honest fan.
Yeah.
So we're gonna try and pull this one off.
Yeah. Okay. Again, thanks for watching. As always, final word, Steve.
Keep your stick on the ice.